All right, guys, give me just a second. I think we are now live. I want to be able to share that out for us real quick. Maybe. I don't know how quick our camp internet really is, but
Yeah, yeah,
Internet for me.
that's right.
oh goodness. Yeah, we are now live. Let me share this. All right. Okay, I think we're good, guys. I'm sure there'll be just some people join us here as we move forward here in the next few minutes. But just first of all, I want to just welcome John and Lindsay Birkey. Thanks, guys, for joining me today.
Yeah.
Hey, it's good to be here.
So with that, I just want to kind of let everybody know and also give some people time to jump on.
Sure.
What we've been doing this month is kind of doing what we call a missionary month. At Mount Hope, one of the things that makes it, what we think, at least what makes it Mount Hope, is that we really put an emphasis on missions. We love missions and always have since the beginning. And so every day at camp, there's about a 45-minute window. I'm not sure why we call it missions hour, even though it's 45 minutes. But anyway, regardless, we call it missions. We're trying to give the speakers, we say 45 minutes so that we try to give them a time limit. Maybe that's it. But missions hour, and we invited a missionary to come in to share. And so this month, we have been just kind of inviting some missionaries that have been a part of our Mount Hope family over the past 5, 6, well, I guess in the Louder's case, a lot longer than that. But recently, we've had some really just missionaries near and dear to our hearts. And the Birkeys are definitely one of them. And so we're going to be chatting with them here in the next few minutes. But I just wanted to remind everybody that if you have missed any of the previous interviews, that you can go to our website at mounthopebiblecamp.com or our YouTube channel, or you can also find those on our Facebook page. We only have one more interview after today's, and that will be on Thursday morning at 11 a.m. And Sarah and I are actually going to be sitting in the opposite chairs. Our board president, Jonathan King, here at Mount Hope, is going to be interviewing us to kind of finish off our missionary month. And so you can be checking that out on Thursday morning. But right now, we have John and Lindsay Birkey with World Gospel Mission out there in the blazing heat of Arizona in the American Indian field, right?
That's right.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys, for joining us. And let's just kind of jump right in. Let me just start off with asking you, if you would, to kind of share briefly your personal testimony and when you decided to follow Jesus, and then we'll move from there.
You go first.
All right. So I was mostly raised in Montana, and I grew up going to Awana, but I didn't really understand everything. I just mostly came for the games because I was a competitive kid. I loved to play the games. And so I always wanted to win the games. And one night I remember the pastor kind of gathering us around and saying, okay, if you want Jesus in your heart, bow your head, close your eyes, and raise your hand. And I peeked an eye open because I wanted to see if my friends were doing it. I had no idea what was going on. So I raised my hand, and that was kind of my first introduction to, asking Jesus in my heart. I didn't really understand what it meant at that time. I was young. I was probably about 7. And fast forward a little bit, when I was starting to get into junior high, I realized some of my friends weren't, really making the best choices. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of asked God, I said, if this thing is really real, I need you to send me someone who's going to be a great example of what it looks like to follow Jesus. Because not that my parents were bad people, sometimes you just need that outside person just to kind of break through and make that impact. And so shortly after, we got a new youth pastor, and he was not only, at our church, but he was also a counselor at our school, and he was a coach. So I pretty much got to live the Christian life, or I got to see the Christian life lived out like in front of me 24/7, like every day of the week. So that was an awesome gift. And I recommitted my life to the Lord at age 13 and wanted to be a youth pastor because my youth pastor had a big impact on me. So Went to Huntington University, started out with a major in youth ministry, realized that I wanted to kind of go for a younger age group. So I switched to family and children's ministry. And that's kind of how the Lord led us here.
Well, I think I have a testimony. It's pretty much I don't know. I would say there's quite a few kids that go to Mount Hope Bible College or school or camp. Well, I don't want to say college, anyways. Go to camp in a similar situation. You grew up in a home church. You have Christian parents, Christian grandparents. You went to church every Sunday. That's just what the normal routine is. Go to camp in the summer, that kind of thing. And I think kids can kind of sense, and I used to feel this a lot. I don't really have a testimony, like it doesn't ring like hers. That's like a really cool, it's neat that. Then at the same time, I've come to appreciate my testimony, which is God did an amazing work through my family before I was ever born. And because of that, I had the privilege of growing up in a Christian household, going to church, being raised in a Christian home with good values. And, I didn't have to deal with the mess that Lindsay, in a way, kind of grew up out of because of the circumstances of parents' decisions and such. But, I am blessed to say that God did a saving work through my parents and my grandparents before I was even born, so that I didn't have to deal with those kind of things. And it made it really easy for me to accept Christ in my life because I could see it firsthand what that impact was. And so my testimony is 13, went to a Christian concert with our youth group with the church. And, those Christian concerts often have an evangelist that comes along. The evangelist came out and preached. I couldn't tell you who they were or what they were preaching, but gave an altar call at the end of it, and I could not stay seated. And I grew up in a conservative church. Altar call was like a foreign concept. You don't get up for anything unless it's to drag your kid out to shush them or something. But so they did an altar call, and for some reason I just the Holy Spirit was on me, and he was compelling me forward. That's how I can see it now today, but I didn't understand it then necessarily that way. So I accepted Christ in my life then. About fast forward a couple more years, and I was baptized into church. And again, much like Lindsay, our youth leaders in particular had a big impact in both of our faith formations and that age range right there, high school age. And because of that, I felt like God was calling me into ministry, and I wasn't sure what that looked like. I had done some missions experiences with our church, and that had me really intrigued as to what does it look like to serve God outside of a church building. And so I went to college at Huntington, just like she did. That's how we met. And I majored in youth ministry at first, and then I picked up a double major in missions because I wasn't sure if church-based youth ministry is what God was calling me to. And sure enough, here we are in a different situation. So,
yeah. Hey, guys, I love that. There was several things that you guys mentioned. I just like to comment on. First of all, like you were saying, John, the struggle is real for a lot of kids when they're I don't know, they doubt maybe their testimony or the power of their testimony. If they've grown up in church and with a family that is faithful to attend church and to teach them about the word and different things. And but just like you said, he's already been working behind the scenes even before you were born, before I have a very similar story as well. We are blessed. We are a blessed people to be able to be so fortunate to be able to have that Christian heritage that has helped us in our faith journey and hopefully brought us to that point of decision. That's beautiful. And then on the other side, Lindsay, I just thought, like when you were saying about a coach and just a kind of a youth pastor, a mentor, and then John, you even mentioned that too.
Yeah.
I just think, for those that might be listening that are in youth ministry or considering youth ministry, listen, don't question like you are investing in the kingdom. All right. And so don't forget that. Don't miss that, because
Kids ministry the same. Both areas, kids and youth ministry, both the same. And teaching.
Yeah.
Be solid Christian teachers. I mean, Lindsay's testimony is somebody who was just a guidance counselor at church.
Yeah.
Was willing to be the youth leader at the church, guidance counselor at school, youth leader at church.
Yeah.
That wasn't some crazy hero story,
No.
It's just a guy living out his faith in a real world.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
That is perfect. Spot on. All right, guys. So, and John, let me ask one more question. You said something about mission trips outside of the church. Like, can you maybe speak a little bit more in detail? How did that play into, and then I'll just kind of lead into the next question, your call to missions? Did it have any bearing on that? And then Lindsay, you can speak to your call to missions and maybe the short-term trips.
Sure. So, I was baptized into the church about 16, and then my first missions experience was right about that time when our church had been sponsoring our orphanage in Haiti for years, and got an opportunity to go down with my youth pastor and a best friend of mine to spend a week helping fix up and play with the kids and do the stuff around your orphanage down there. And I grew up in the rural part of middle Indiana. It's not that much different other than rolling hills you guys have. We have flat cornfield, but I mean the demographics as a whole are fairly similar, and we didn't really have a lot of anything resource wise. You're just getting by, and it really didn't feel like we were rich in any way, shape, or form until you go to a third world country like Haiti, and it slaps you in the face so hard. And that really got me, it changed my mindset, and it opens your eyes to what the world is like in many other countries. And it truly shows that even the least of these in the US is still better than 90% of the world population in a lot of ways. And so that just opened my eyes, and I had a heart for those kids, just playing with them, engaging with them. Even though they didn't have much, they seemed to always have joy, and even the adults, you could tell the worship that they brought to the Lord was like none other. It just was unique and special to me. So that kind of really got me thinking about missions ministry concepts, and I had done some short-term stuff. And then in college, while I was at Huntington University, one of the things that our university requires mission or ministry majors is to do, I guess you kind of be like we call it kind of like a student teaching concept, where you have to spend a semester with a teacher and kind of eventually learn how to take over a classroom. Well, they wanted us to spend 6 months with a person doing ministry in a field that we feel like God is calling us to in the long term, so that we really would get a full immersion of that concept. So I thought, well, I'm a youth ministry and missions double major. I need to do youth ministry in a cross-cultural setting. So I signed up to go to Bolivia with World Gospel Mission as a volunteer in action back in the day. And actually, Betsy and Gearson, you had them on a couple of weeks back. Betsy was dating Gearson when I went down there, so that was kind of funny.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we went out. Well, I guess I was a third wheel on a date. I don't know. They took me out to a Brazilian barbecue. It's a side story. Anyways, so I was there for about 3 months and was working at the Christian school down there, and did some traveling. Met other missionaries there as well, doing different works in different areas. But political unrest kicked me out of the country. It just got so bad down there at that point. They were having problems with the president that they sent me home. Well, I was already halfway through a semester abroad, like class program. There was nothing at home, for me. So they quickly flipped me and turned me off to Stockton, California, to work with inner city Hispanic kids, gang infested environment. And it just rocked my world again. Here, I felt safer in a country in Bolivia than I did in the U.S., inner city ministry there. So it just kind of threw me upside down on my whole idea of like what missions looks like. Here, I thought missions was going third world countries, living in the jungles in the bush, and having solar power maybe at best or something, battery operated.
Yeah.
And here I found that I had more of an impact just engaging with kids after school, trying to keep them out of gang life, helping them with their homework, and then teaching them about Bible stories, telling them that God loves them. And that played a major role when 3 years later, after we had been married and I had been serving as a youth pastor at a church, it just felt like God was still calling me back to the mission field and us in a sense. And so when we decided to go back to WGM because of my connections and history with them through volunteering, we said, what do you have for us? And one of the things they were looking for was a camp director for Bible camps out here in Arizona, working with Native American kids. And naturally, it was a perfect fit for us as a couple. I'd done a lot of work with youth in young adult ministry, and Lindsay's background is in children's and family ministry. So between the two of us, being the camp directors of the program just was really, we could feed off of each other's education experiences. So that's kind of how I guess we as a couple ended up out here in Arizona.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I didn't know the connection with the Tejadas. That's pretty cool too.
Small world.
Cool. Yes, it is.
You're gonna go all the way across the world to find somebody you know.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. All right. So let me ask this question, just because I know there are some people that are some of our staff currently with Mount Hope that are maybe wrestling with that question. Is missions what I'm called to do for my full-time occupation? Like is this what I'm going to be doing as a career? And so could you offer them any advice as they are considering those next steps? Like, what would you tell somebody considering or maybe feeling like God is leading them into missions?
Lots of prayer, obviously, seeking the Lord's guidance because you want to be sure. Also, I would say just kind of getting your feet wet. Go on several short trip missions, whether that's here in the US, whether that's to another country. Short trip missions are kind of open your eyes, kind of helps you get your feet wet, kind of helps you get a little bit more experience and kind of figure out where you might feel called. Just kind of opens that window for you to get things started.
I would also add, Book of Proverbs has a lot to say about seeking godly counsel and wisdom in making that decision. And I mean, we oftentimes, even now on the mission field, we have 2 or 3 really good friends of ours that are not connected with the mission agency whatsoever, just other good Christian couples that we really have learned to value their input and to discern it. God uses them many times to kind of give us a chance to bounce off what we're sensing God is telling us to do, and whether they can help us discern, is this the right decision for us at this time? And whether or are we just being emotional and we just want to get, whatever the decision, we just want to do something selfish or something, is it really the will of God? Are we willing to follow that? Or is that just as I joke around, a bad burrito or something?
I love it. And here's the thing that I've noticed, like this is interview number 7. And I've asked that question on most interviews, and we didn't rehearse this, right? But nearly every response has been identical. Try to engage, just immerse yourself, just jump out there, take some short-term trips. That's been one. I know the Williams, Justin and Debbie, like that was, Justin was like, yes, you got to jump in, you got to,
yeah.
But then like just even our last interview with John Louder was very adamant about seeking God's leading through his people and the confirmation, just exactly what you were talking about with the wisdom and the godly counsel that God has placed in your life and how huge that is as well. And so it's really cool to see that echoed in every response. So anybody listening and you're in that position, that place of just trying to figure out, is God calling me to this? I would just strongly encourage you to consider that advice. to just jump out there and maybe take some short-term trips or engage in some manner. I know for me, it was, I didn't have the opportunity to take a short-term trip, but I wrote a letter back and forth to a missionary in Zaire, Africa as a 10-year-old, sending my allowance to him. That was my engagement. That just softened my heart for, and he took the time to write me back, which was really cool.
That's really cool.
But that engagement, that's what it started. And then godly counsel and his word and prayer, those are the pieces I think that will, give you confirmation as you walk your next steps. So that's awesome. I appreciate that, John and Lindsay. That great advice. Okay. So let's jump in to what we would probably consider day 2 at Mount Hope.
Sure.
What's ministry look like? Like who do you minister to? What do you do? And then if you feel comfortable, maybe even share like how has COVID-19 flipped things upside down, I'm sure. And so I'm just going to kind of leave that open. Feel free to share any stories, and maybe I'll ask some follow-up questions, but just tell us what ministry looks like for you all there in Arizona.
Yep.
You want me to start?
So I think first and foremost, I'm going to kind of throw a wrench in it. Being a missionary, you have to be flexible to what God is calling you to do, and you're going to have your role change. God's going to rock your world and say, you know what, there's a need over here that you need to focus on. I'm going to switch what you're going to do. And for us, we first came out to be camp directors, and he was in charge of, the youth and the young adults. And I was more over the elementary students. And for us, that was our wheelhouse. That's what we went to college for. Everything was very clear. We had kids, and all of a sudden I'm a mom. And so I don't have as much time, to devote to that. And so God said, you know what, your first ministry is your family. So I'm raising our 2 young girls, still very much involved in camp ministry. I lead the children and youth ministry team here on the field. So just trying to help make sure that they have the resources they need to do ministry in their various areas. But just being open to the fact that your role is going to change. You need to be flexible to what God has called you to. And honestly, right now, with John's role changing also, I'm trying to figure out what my new role is, really going to be once the kids start getting into school. So just being flexible and listening to what God has for you.
So we were camp directors here on the field up until last summer. We wrapped up the summer, and then before that, we have a facility here in Peoria, which is a suburb of Phoenix. It's where we kind of had our start to the ministry to Native Americans here. Started as a boarding school in the early 50s. And ran until 1998. I was one the last class, graduated in 98. Since then, we switched to a camp and retreat center. And so our ministry model changed to more of Native American reading camps at first, and then went into Bible camps. And now that's kind of been the focus there. And of course, then also hosting other Native groups and associated groups and meeting their needs for retreat center to be able to have meetings and events and such. So that's been what our facility's been about. We came to take over the campsite of things, and about a year ago or so, God was really working in my heart. I was wrestling with the fact that we have a 20-acre campus that we're not doing enough programming here because the kids aren't necessarily here. They live throughout the state of Arizona, and they're coming in for parts of time here, but this facility needed more. It can do that and more. And God led me to the parable of the talents and how the master gives 3 different servants different levels of talents. And this goes on a business trip, so we assume, right? It comes back and then he says, all right, guys, let's talk. What did you do with my money? And the first guy says, hey, you gave me 5, I made you 10, I doubled it. Second guy says, you gave me 3, I gave you 6 back, I doubled it. Third guy was like, you're kind of shrewd and I'm really nervous that you're going to be like mean to me. So I knew you liked that, because a talent, by the way, is over $1 million, if you think of it that way. So think about how much money these guys were given in today's terms. He was nervous and he was afraid he was going to lose it. So he buried it. he came back and the servant said, here it is. And the master was like, you're so lazy. What were you doing this whole time? Why didn't you do something with this money? Matter of fact, get out of here. Give me that. And he gave it back to the town. The master gave it to the servants that did better, the one. And so we sit here and we go, is God looking at us from a spiritual side and a facility side? Are we doing enough to double his kingdom impact? What are we doing with this facility to double kingdom impact? And I recognized at that point I needed to make a change in my role to fill a need that our field had, which is running this facility. And so last summer we finished up our last role as camp directors, and I switched into more facility director role for the ministry center here in Peoria. And we've been doing a lot of working with other churches, groups, using our space to run their camps and retreats and events as well. We've had everything from Hispanic women's retreats to a youth overnight event where we had a bunch of Valley kids here in Phoenix, like 150 junior hires or something like that on our campus playing Dart Wars in our gym. And then they came back the next day and tried to paint one of our buildings. You know how junior high in paint work. It does. It's oil and water, but it was a lot of fun to be a part of that for them. And in the meantime, they're using of our facility funds and helps maintain our buildings so we can continue to do camps and reach Native kids for the gospel. So it's a win-win situation. We're doubling impact by providing space for groups that need space to do their ministry, and they're reaching people that we wouldn't otherwise touch. I don't know Spanish, so I can't really speak to women's conferences in Spanish, but at the same time, they're not in a position to reach the Native American communities that we've been in touch with. But together, we're making kingdom impacts in both areas by using our facility that way. So that has been what we've done with the facility. But since COVID has come into play, that's really changed our ministry philosophy yet again. Here we are looking at summer camps, and we're not going to be able to do it this year, just like you guys. We're in a situation where it would not be wise of us to do camps. Native population is very vulnerable right now. A lot of health conditions and things like that. Plus, we get kids that come from all over the state, and the last thing we want to do is be a petri dish to Corona to send back. And they're living with mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles, and it just would be a disaster potential for us. So we've moved to more of a digital platform as a ministry, going that way. But as a facility, we're looking and we go, so camps aren't, camps, conferences, events like that has been our bread and butter ministry stuff. What do we do? I've heard the phrase, and I use it sometimes, probably too much, but said when the tide goes out, to catch you skinny dipping, and here we are recognizing that this ministry model that we've kind of hung our hat on, this tradition of camps or programs, large group events, God's kind of forcing us outside that box. It's just like the local church is forced to get outside of their building and be the church in their community. We're now forced to think outside the box of what the campus's concept has always been. So we've been actually working a lot with local churches, church plants, trying to create more of a Christian community center. We have facility space for events and programs and such, and offices and things like that. And there's a lot of churches in our community that are reaching the people in our community, but they don't have buildings of their own. They're renting high school gymnasiums for church on Sundays, which means they don't have it for midweek and other programs, and the meeting, Cracker Barrel used to anyways, for staff meetings and things like that. Well, those things are kind of lost right now for them. We have one church that just started last Sunday meeting in our chapel again because they couldn't get into the gym that they were renting out of the public school. Public schools are afraid to rent right now to outside groups, and until there's some more clarity on all that, these churches are looking for ministry space and meeting space. And so if we can't use it to do camps and programs can we reach the community around us through these churches and providing them a space to meet. And COVID is also, it's causing, and I'm probably monologuing and going too far, but COVID is also causing another opportunity for us to meet the needs, physical needs of Native Americans in their communities out on the reservations. So one of the compassionate ministries that we've been starting up is been providing food, Bibles, hygiene items, cleaning supplies to Native Americans, in particular the seniors, elders, they call them, that are shut in, because the tribes are really encouraging the elders to stay home and not go anywhere. They just don't want them to be exposed. So they're relying on the rest of the Native community to step up the game and provide them the resources they need at home. And so we've been able to help pastors provide food, hygiene, and cleaning products to individuals within their communities. And it's not a handout, but a hand up. It's a door into their house to meet a physical need, but also meet a spiritual need and a relational need. They bring it as a Christian, sharing the love of Christ in a time of need. And it has, we've heard time and time again, doors have been opening to the gospel message to be shared. And much like churches are seeing the digital platform is going through the roof, these Native people are learning how to use technology and getting on Facebook and watching church services. We had one pastor friend of ours, a missionary friend of ours, say, normally on Easter Sunday, I have maybe 60, 80 if there's a carry-in meal. You know how that goes. Yeah. Anyways, he said we had probably over 250 people watch our Facebook Easter service because they're hungry for that. They're looking for something right now. So it's exciting to see how God's still using this time to advance his kingdom and pushing us outside of our box. And that's kind of what missions life is, in a sense.
Yeah, I loved everything that you said, John. I could sum up in one word, well, maybe two: creating relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I was just thinking about trying to help other churches and different people utilize your space, and then meeting physical needs. It's all about creating relationships so that you have the opportunity to be able to share the gospel or facilitate opportunities for the gospel message to continue. And I really think, I mean, if it boils down to it, that's really what being a missionary is about, is creating relationships that hopefully eventually turn into opportunities to share the gospel.
I would argue that that's what a Christian's about. Mission.
Yes, I think so too.
It's about creating relationships so that you can share the love of Christ, whether that's just through the engagement or whether there's an intentional effort to have an opportunity. Of course, I think we all should be praying for a door and the courage to share the love of Christ with the people, regardless of what position we hold, title-wise or job-wise. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. All right. So let me follow up with one more question here. Going back to what Lindsay said at the very beginning is flexibility. I totally agree.
Yes.
But let me ask this question: like that transition from camp director to more facility, like what was the hardest adjustment for you in that transition? Or was it a piece of cake? No problem.
From my point of view, he was a lot busier. So I was doing a lot more trying to keep up with stuff and just trying to support him however I could. So.
Yeah, there was in a sense, moving into the facility director, it was like, I'm starting up a small business retreat center, which means I'm limited staff and I'm just about everything but the treasurer in a sense, or the bookkeeper. But I was doing a lot of that too. But everything from taking reservations to hosting to clean up to, I was running hard. And so Corona was in a way a chance for me to reset and rethink. Is working? Can I do this sustainably for a long time? And so it had been a blessing in disguise for us that I needed a chance to step back and reevaluate. When you're doing programming, Brett, you've been there with
Yep.
camps, middle
Yep.
summer camp, when things are going down. You don't have a chance to kind of get above the mess, the whirlwind, so to speak, to look outside of beyond that, to think more creatively. You're just trying to survive in the moment. And
It's so true.
and so it's good sometimes to be able to get out of that mess and breathe for a bit, and then you start to say, well, that did make sense. Why did I do it that way? And then God kind of starts to work on you to say, hey, why don't you try this idea instead?
Yeah.
Not only do I think it'll be better for you physically, mentally, spiritually, but honestly, I think it's going to have a bigger impact too. So
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, so let me take just a brief pause here for a second,
Sure.
and just for anybody that is joining or just watching now, I just want to encourage you that if you have a question that you would like to have the Birkeys answer here in the next few minutes, you can put that in the comments, or you can email Brett, BRETT, at mounthopebiblecamp.com, and I'll pass those along. But let's go ahead and kind of shift gears to what day 3 would look like at Mount Hope, and that's kind of how our Mount Hope family can engage with what you are doing on the field. And so let me just first start off with let's talk about prayer. How could our Mount Hope family be praying for you all and the ministry currently? Like, what are some specific things that we could be praying for you guys, and then we'll move from there.
Guidance, as far as I've been praying for God to show me where's the line between, like, we all want to help, we all want to get involved, but at what cost? We don't want to risk, with the virus going on right now, just where's that line? How can I still serve without being a danger to anybody, being a danger to myself? But also in that, just I have a lot of other people on my children and youth ministry team who are asking the question, okay, what's, kind of in a sense, what's this new normal going to look like? How do we get back into ministry? What kind of new things do we need to be doing to try to keep everything safe? A lot of guidance.
Okay.
I would say just be praying for us as a field. We have today starts our annual staff retreat, which is normally not in Phoenix, but because of circumstances, we're using our facilities that we already have to be able to do our staff retreat. And I think we're all kind of soured on it in general, just because everybody wants the opportunity to get away from where they've been cramped into, so to speak, for months on end. And staff retreat's always been that chance to get away and breathe some mountain air and just kind of reset. And I think a lot of us are, as a staff, are kind of feeling like that was taken from us in a weird way, but we still believe that God is going to meet us here and we're going to be spiritually refreshed. But just be praying for us this week that He'll renew us. We've been poured out quite a bit over the last year, just in the stresses of ministry and life and family stuff that have changed, and having to have kids at the home all the time and things of that nature. It's time for God to really refresh us and fill us up again so we can be poured out over again. And so just be praying for us this week that we would feel a sense of renewal.
Yeah, I totally get that. And while I think it's easy sometimes to think that the COVID kind of, and I guess in a sense it gave us a little bit of time to breathe, but the stresses of the unknowns almost kind of overtakes that, so it is nice to be able to get together with others. So we're praying that you'll have a great time starting tonight, right?
Yeah.
You guys are welcome to the staff. And I think we need to pray for some cooler temperatures there in Phoenix too, right?
It would be nice. 111 sounds a little hot for me this week.
Yeah. I don't want any of that. That's for certain. All right. So we'll definitely be praying in regards to that. Now, let me ask this question. How could people, if well, tell us where you are, maybe with your support or what your plans were. I know we had talked briefly as far as support raising. And if somebody wanted to jump on board with you all and partner with you, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this summer was a summer we were planning to do some fundraising. We probably really should have jumped out of that last fall, but moving into that new position with the ministry, especially that first year, it was crucial for us to try to stick it out a little longer and try to get the ball rolling, which was a really good thing because there was a lot of things that we needed to get accomplished facility wise, and we praise the Lord that he didn't bring COVID to us sooner, because we were really able to get some things done, and we're in a better position because of that as a facility in the ministry center here. But our ministry support in itself is on its, I guess you could say, its last legs. It won't be long before the headquarters is calling us out. Actually, they told us in September we need to go on our fundraising again, and so we're trying to get ahead of that. We were gonna go support raising this summer some, but because of COVID, we're at a position where we just don't think it's wise for us to travel at this point. Not only risking potential of spreading something that is kind of unseen and unknown, but also not a lot of churches are going to be ready, I think, for us to drop in and say hi as much as we'd like to. This is probably our best option, something that's more of a digital platform check-in. But so yeah, we're short. We're at a point where it's time to kind of replenish and rebuild our support team. We, as usual, every missionary probably always says there's attrition in your support calculation over time, whether that's through people losing jobs or retiring or passing on, or life happens, medical, whatever it is. There's a lot that just goes into those decisions that are made, and sometimes it's just kind of seems like it's out of their hands, and it's understandable. So yeah, we do need support. I know you're going to post some links, I think, for people to figure out how to do that. So
yeah, it just made its way in the comments. So that's their WGN profile. You'll be able to give there, and WGN makes it really easy.
I do, yeah, and it's really handy. You do a one time, or you can even sign up for an annual, and it automatic comes out of your debit or credit transaction, however you set it up. So it's really handy.
And let me just say, as a missionary myself, what John really wants to say, but may not, is the reoccurring is really what's helpful.
It does, and we don't shy away from any gift, and we're thankful for every one of them.
Absolutely.
One-time gifts are always helpful, but the continual support really is what sustains your ministry.
Yes.
That monthly or quarterly transaction, whatever it is, how they decide to do it, really maintains your ability to stay long-term on a field.
Yes.
Because it's great to get that lump sum, but anybody knows the reoccurring investment is what sustains and builds the long-term impact. So
totally agree. So the challenge is out there, Mount Hope. Let's jump on board with the Birkeys and try to help them out. If you have any questions, I'd be more than willing to help you out, or we can connect you with the Birkeys and they can do that as well. Let me follow up though. You mentioned about maybe not necessarily meeting in person with churches, but you have the capability and welcome the opportunity to maybe meet digitally if they were interested in that.
Yeah, I think a lot of missionaries are looking into that mindset, the different models. We're toying with the idea of possibly sometime early part of June, maybe mid part of June, doing some kind of a Zoom kind of like coffee roundtable deal where we just like this. We just set up and say, come join us on Zoom and email us or ask us a question in the comment box, and we'll just kind of do an update on what we're doing ministry wise, but otherwise just answer your questions and invite people to do that. But we've also said to churches, if you ever just want to bring us in via video conference deal and put us up on a big screen do a little interview that way, we'd be glad to do that kind of concept as well. Share about what God's been doing here on the field.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You know, COVID has changed some things, but I hope some things stay around. And I think the digital platform, I think, has some great potential.
Yeah,
moving
it's been
forward.
really neat to see because, like, for example, we have for the last 6 or 7 weeks been going to church in Indiana, sometimes church in Illinois, and then eventually church in Arizona because of the time zone changes. So it's been kind of neat to be able to connect with some churches that we wouldn't otherwise get a chance to see, and people that I would never have expected to get something like Zoom video chat. Now have it on their computer and they probably don't know how to uninstall it. So it's even better.
Exactly right. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So let me ask one final question. I don't think that we have any questions that have come in so far. So we may make this the last question. We'll see here. But you mentioned updates. And so I know that you guys have a Facebook page, correct? So can you tell us about that and how you use it?
Yeah, that's just our ministry page. We try our best to share just what's been going on in our field. Sometimes it's stuff that we post personally, but most of the time we're sharing what other ministries are doing here in our area here in Peoria. So that's Facebook/JL Birkey. So J and L for John and Lindsay Birkey. I'm sure you'll share that in the comment section. And just click on that, and that's going to kind of give you an update as we have events and things that are going on our field. We try to share those on that page and keep people posted on what we're doing. Of course, obviously, we still do newsletters. So if anybody ever wants a newsletter, shoot us a message there on that Facebook page, and we'll be glad to add your email or regular address, mailing address to our newsletter list and be able to share those out to you as we get them done. So.
All right. Hey, John and Lindsay, thank you so much for taking time today to join us. Greatly appreciate it. And as always, it's just been a real encouragement to me, and I know for many of our Mount Hope family as well. With that, let me just remind everybody that's listening or watching, we have one more of these interviews left, and that'll be on Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Sarah and I will be sitting in the other seats as Jonathan King, our board president, will be interviewing us to kind of wrap up our missionary month. But as always, you can go to our website, our app, or our Facebook page to catch any of the past interviews. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. And again, John and Lindsay, thank you so much for taking the time today. I know today's been crazy busy. You got up early to smoke some meat, right? For the event tonight.
Got a turkey in the smoker box. So
and so I appreciate you taking some time to meet with us today. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the Facebook Live. So if you want to do a quick shout out.
Thanks everybody for coming and watching. So.